Welcome everyone to our third TAN Council recurring meeting. Today's agenda covers several important items, including answering some community questions, introducing the technical spec of the activating TEL issuance at the application layer TANIP, deciding on timings for our next meetings, and wrapping up with some open discussion. Firstly, however, let's start with an overview of the TAN Council and the purpose of these recurring meetings. So, these recurring meetings serve 5 critical functions. They provide transparency to our community. They create a structured forum for proposal discussions, enabling authors to present to the Council and community and to discuss, debate, and refine for formal proposal and voting with consensus. They enable regular platform updates. They ensure consistent communication among Council members, and finally, they allow direct community engagement through question and answer sessions. The TAN Council is a local governance organisation within the TELcoin platform. Together, we serve as a provider and administrator of collective goods and services within the jurisdictional domain of the TELcoin application network, or TAN. The TAN Council, with our 6 members, makes decisions related to TAN improvements and policies through the TANIP process. We need 5 out of 6 votes to approve proposals within a 120-hour voting period. Our key responsibilities include reviewing and voting on snapshot proposals, attending these bi-weekly meetings, providing regular community updates, and monitoring TAN systems, and enforcing operational rules. We'll use Discord for day-to-day communication, the forum for informal proposal discussions, these recurring council meetings for proposal discussions, deliberation and refinement, and snapshot for formal voting. Nice. So, just to rattle through a few community questions from this previous week, we had 3 main ones, and starting with the first, I think it was Ari asked, in the response to the question about vagueness of requirements, I believe I heard the response to be the list of the requirements on the application developer's technology used page. Are there requirements or examples of things that the mobile application can do? If these are truly a full list of requirements, then the TEL mobile app would not satisfy all of them as written. So basically, TELcoin Holdings, the first application developer authorized via TGIP1 and the ratification of the association constitution, does meet all of those requirements. Regardless, TEL issuance has not yet been implemented on TAN, so the enforcement of those rules is not yet a duty of the association. Furthermore, given these are operational rules that structure day-to-day interactions within the jurisdiction of the TELcoin application network, they are under the authority of the TAN Council and are subject to change based on decisions made by the TAN Council using the TANIP process. The second question was, based on the eligibility guide in the docs, specifically licensure, quote, licensed to provide money transmission or banking services in all operating jurisdictions where applicable, where would this leave service type apps? More specifically, if a GSMA member were to create services based on the network that allowed other member organizations to utilize as part of their applications, but those application functions did not revolve around money transmission or banking services. So the key thing here is the where applicable part. If they aren't involved in money transmission or banking services, then they don't need the licenses. TELcoin application network is designed to incentivize the creation of a wide variety of different user applications that leverage the TELcoin platform, from finance to Uber bikes on chain to telecom use cases and beyond. The rules incentivize developers based on their application's usage of the underlying layers, TELX and TELcoin network, their users' ownership of the system via referral fees, and their use of TEL as a production input. From the issuance perspective, based on the rules and given TELX is primarily for exchange, applications that leverage exchange are positioned to earn more issuance. Some use cases may not be financial in nature. However, they still need to be compliant in the way they KYC on AML users, which basically leads to one user is one account. And they need to enable users to on and off ramp between their application and their bank or other account. That means for non-financial services, they could simply leverage another provider's bank licenses or MTL or similar to cover those functions of their product, should they have a partner who can do that. The point is to ensure that developer members are not operating as unlicensed money transmitters. For the final question, would apps from GSMA organizations be eligible if the application and/or services-based application be required to perform typical KYC activities if their processes were more B2B and not B2C? There are still KYC requirements on B2B activities, and those must be met. The main principle again is one user for one account. If there are cases where individuals feel there doesn't need to be KYC, and that can make sense, but they still have to make it through Compliance Council approval and go live and harvest TEL. So hopefully that covers those questions. If anyone is uncertain about those, please let me know. I don't see Ari here for approval that they answered, but he can ask in Discord if need be. So before we get Marcus to present the technical aspects of the TAN improvement proposal for activating TEL issuance at the application layer, I'd like to just give a quick overview of the general premise of the proposal, which we introduced last week. So this improvement proposal operates around the idea of a token distribution mechanism designed to incentivize both developers and stakers within the TELcoin application network ecosystem. By allocating a portion of TEL tokens held in the TAN Council safe to these two groups each week, the proposal aims to foster active participation, encourage application development from GSMA member organizations, and promote user adoption through referrals. In doing so, it intends to drive platform growth and ensure that all participants, including end users, benefit from and contribute to the on-chain ecosystem. So the token distribution framework is sourced from the TAN Council safe, and there'll be weekly distributions. For developers, this will be up to about 3.2 million TEL a week. And that depends on the number of approved developers. And for stakers, it's fixed at 3.2 mil TEL a week. So those are current suggested values, and those are subject to change if we so wish. So in terms of developer incentives, these are only for GSMA members operating in approved jurisdictions and meeting infrastructure standards, which were mentioned in the questions. So as kind of mentioned previously, these will unlock as more developers join. So if there's one developer, that developer will receive a third of the weekly total allocation. So that's around 1 million TEL. If there are two developers, it goes up to 2 million. If there are three, it goes up to 3 million. If there are more than three, it stays at 3 mil and it's distributed pro rata. Developers' shares are determined by user level metrics such as referral fees, telex exchange fees, and network gas fees. So basically, the more fees that an application is developing, the more TEL issuance it will receive. For stakers, this is for any TELcoin mobile app who has added a referral code. They all share this 3.2 mil TEL allocation pro rata, and that's also based on the fees that their referrals generate. And there's also an issuance cap, so throughout the distribution period, the total amount of TEL staked must always exceed the sum of all previously issued TEL plus the current week's issuance. So that's included to maintain stability and prevent excessive token inflation. So Marcus can actually run us through the suggestion for the actual implementation of that, which I'm quite excited to hear. So, Marcus, if you don't mind, the floor is yours. Take it away.
Absolutely. Let me just clean up some things here so that I'm in a cleaner workspace. And I realized too, Leo, I forgot to let you know that the doc is completed and ready to be posted to the TANIP forums. So if anybody has any questions about what I talk about here in this meeting, please, refer to the TANIP forum. There will be a post there with a lot of this implementation, the technical implementation details outlined there on a forum post that will be coming either tonight or potentially tomorrow. So you have that to look forward to. Um, so essentially what we're looking to do with this 10IP1 is to introduce a scalable and relatively automated way to provide TEL issuance, and this is TEL, tokens, to Telcoin stakers and sort of implement a referral program to structure the way that Telcoin is issued. Um, and so to do that, the program is it's structured in a specific way so that people who stake TEL and refer users um, are able to sort of collect a staking reward or a referral reward through the program. Um, and so the highlights of it, I've listed these as protocol invariants because that's generally sort of the way that I look at protocols that sort of interact with the chain. Um, in DeFi or governance protocols and so forth. But in this case, it's because it's a referral program that's going to be hitting the chain and sort of being issued to existing stakers and the stakers who refer new users to the Telcoin app. I think looking at it through a protocol lens is equally appropriate. So from a technical standpoint, we do have an existing implementation of this program. It's imperfect, however, because there's been a lot of technical drift between when it was implemented and what the contract and the program sort of spec looked like at that time versus sort of the final spec that we've come up with and are presenting to you now, and the contract upgrades that may have happened in the interim. So the existing implementation of the TAN issuance sort of calculation and distribution spec sort of has a few assumptions that would differ from what I'm about to describe. But as far as implementation goes, there is sort of existing code and existing implementation to look at and to improve upon. So this should be a successful TAN IP from my perspective because sort of what needs to be done is to put a set of engineering eyes and um, on the existing code base, sort of refactor it into so that it addresses the technical drift that's happened in the interim and sort of um, improve upon it, robustify it, scale it, and make it relevant to what the proposal is going to do. So from the protocol lens, there's a few invariants. Users of the Telcoin app are able to stake Telcoin tokens through the app interface. They're also able to do that on chain, which is sort of an interesting and an important distinction. So I want to start by saying that for this TAN IP, it's important to remember that users, I'll say users who stake Telcoin through the Telcoin app are automatically enrolled into the program, provided they've provided a referral code. But those who stake Telcoin directly on chain, and that's relatively rare. Most most users would be using this through the app. But those who do, for whatever reason, decide to submit staking transactions directly to a smart contract on chain from a command line interface or a MyEther wallet, sort of old school type raw transaction close to the metal, those users will not be automatically enrolled into the program. And so this distinction is really important to note because the referral code is the most the sort of the ticket for entry for this issuance reward program. And the existing contracts don't have referral codes exposed on chain for privacy reasons. So that's an important distinction, and it also ties into a couple things beyond privacy. But the referral code sort of mechanism is required because developers who develop apps sort of external to the Telcoin app, maybe a different kind of app or a social layer or what have you, some other blockchain use case interfacing with the Telcoin network or sort of the Telcoin contracts as they exist, also need a way to be able to participate in the program. So with the needs for privacy and the needs for sort of routing this issuance to developers and to stakers, that's sort of the reason why that distinction is there. So I don't think I need to go in more depth on that. What I'm trying to say is, if you want to be a part of this program, make sure to do it through an official Telcoin developer app. At the moment, there's the one, the Telcoin mobile app, and it's an awesome app, so highly recommend. And it makes sort of circulating these referral codes and entering them in a way that our database is aware of is made very easy. So nice. Well, moving directly into the spec then. So users who stake Telcoin through the Telcoin app basically enter their tokens into a smart contract. And this is a staking contract which locks the tokens and sort of qualifies the staker for a different sort of staking reward system. And that one is baseline. I'm calling it baseline staking in my head. It's unrelated to, well, I shouldn't say unrelated, but it operates in parallel to this TANIP issuance proposal because it sort of entitles you to a yield of staking, like Telcoin staking, that's not related to the referral program. The referral program has more or less 3 protocol participants, and 2 of them are overlapping. And this spec that I'm talking about applies to 2 separate categories. So there's developers and there's stakers. Developers have sort of their own category, but there's largely a mechanism that sort of applies to both developers and stakers for earning referral rewards on stake TEL, except the developers do it by sort of having developed an app. And at the moment, we're sort of pushing that on the lower on the priority list because at the moment we have a lot of Telcoin stakers, but and not as many developers. We've got a fixed number of developer sort of products, applications on TAN. Of course, we plan to expand that, but at the moment, the main focus is stakers. So that's what I'm going to talk about here. And that sort of spec will apply to the developers framework once we sort of move past the staking implementation and implement it for the developer side. So, okay, back to the protocol participants. I'm going to start with 3 terms. They're called stakers, referrers, and referees. Now, that's not a referee, but like a referee, somebody who was received on the receiving end of a referral code and entered it through the Telcoin app. So stakers who lock Telcoin in that smart contract that I mentioned are entitled basically to this program rewards, which would be issued on a weekly basis generally. The spec itself is going to be unopinionated on the time basis between issuance periods, but in general, it's safe to assume that it'll be run once a week. If there are any delays or whatever reason, of course, it'll be flexible enough to handle that. But there'll be roughly a weekly basis at which a fixed sum of Telcoin will be authorized to be issued according to this program rules. So the sort of the base amount that we're working off of at the moment, I believe is to the tune of 3.2 million TEL. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, Leo. I actually don't have it written down here.
No, that's
But
right, yeah.
okay, so yeah, and so this is essentially the fixed pot of rewards on a weekly basis that will be issued to those three protocol participants: the stakers, the referrers, and the referees when appropriate. So to define when those allocations will or will not be issued to those protocol participants, there's a set of sort of referral program rules that will be calculated and evaluated based off of sort of two data sources. The main one being on-chain. And so on-chain, every time that a swap happens through the Telcoin app, there's a user fee that's associated with it. And that's, one major part of where the information about whether or not a staker or a referrer or even a referee will be entitled to sort of rewards through this program. And the other end of the data like source for this program is, of course, the Telcoin backend. And so for the really technical, the Telcoin backend essentially stores the relationships between referrers and referees. And the reason why that's not stored on chain is again for privacy reasons. So the technical spec starts sort of with those two data sources and moves forward according to this set of rules, which I am now getting to. Stakers are Telcoin stakers, right? They've locked their Telcoin in a smart contract, and that's sort of how you become a staker. Stakers can also be referrers, and what that means is a referrer is always a staker. In order to be eligible for rewards, there must be Telcoin locked in a staking contract. So there must be stake locked. But stakers who provide a referral code to a new user, and that new user signs up through the Telcoin app, that staker then becomes a referrer. So there's sort of like a Venn diagram there that's very close to being overlapped, but not quite. And that's an important distinction because stakers are still have the potential to be eligible for rewards, but only through their own trading fees. So let's say you're a user who has staked TEL through the Telcoin application, and you have not referred anybody. You are still eligible for rewards, but only on your own user fees that you've paid for swaps or other sort of like application activities. At the moment, I believe it's only swaps. So referrers, on the other hand, are sort of the more interesting side of the protocol, because the referrers, again, are stakers who have successfully referred other users who would be called referees, but we'll get there. The referrers are eligible for additional rewards, more so than the stakers. The referrers have put up a stake in a staking contract, have referred referees who are now participating in the Telcoin application, and the referrers are eligible for rewards through this TAN issuance program based on the trading fees of their referees. So let's say now we're talking about a staker who became a referrer by referring me. I don't know who the staker is. Let's say, Leo is a staker. He referred me to the Telcoin application, and I've staked and begun trading and, sort of like pay a decent amount of user fees by trading on the Telcoin app. So my fees are actually counted towards the referrer, who was Leo, as well as Leo's own trading fees as far as eligibility for these rewards go. So put another way, by referring me and me having traded on the Telcoin application, Leo is now eligible not only for his own trading fees, but for mine. And that's sort of the very high level, 20,000 foot view of what this program does. On on a blockchain network like this, where there's tons of users and possible connections between referrers and referees, that calculation can get somewhat complicated. But in general, like that, those are the rules along which the issuance of Telcoin will be sort of governed. And again, that happens once a week, roughly 3.2 million TEL being issued based on those parameters. And there's a couple nuances to it. So where am I here? Couple nuances for it. I don't want to get too technical. A lot of my spec here is like discussing actual smart contract events, and I don't think I really need to do that. So let me skip over that. Okay, here. So I'm going to do a quick summary of what sort of I went through because I did sort of blaze through it. Stakers must post a non-zero TEL stake, as well as have entered a referral code to be eligible for rewards. Stakers' own user fees are eligible for rewards. Referrers are stakers who have referred one or more referees, and they are eligible for their referees' user fees in addition to their own fees. That's sort of just rephrasing what I spent the past 5 minutes saying. So thus, eligible users for TAN rewards issuance comprises stakers and referrers. Now, the nuances for these rules are less important, but they're still important, so I'll go over them. There's a rewards cap mechanism, and the reason for this is to sort of incentivize increasing the amount of TEL staked, essentially sort of, locking the supply of TEL in the smart contract and ensuring that, incentives are aligned among the TEL community. So the rewards caps are sort of achieve this by capping the amount of rewards that any single TEL staker can earn. And the cap is the same as the amount of TEL staked. So let's say I'm a staker and I've staked 50 TEL. The maximum amount of TEL that I can earn through this rewards sort of issuance program is 50 TEL, because that is the amount that I've staked. And so in that way, the incentive, it's a sort of a positive sum incentive for me to then stake more once I've reached that cap. The calculation, I guess I can go over it. Yeah. So rewards caps work this way. Rewards for a given period are capped by the lowest stake held by the staker or referrer during the time period, less the rewards already earned. So the rewards cap could be calculated by taking the lowest amount of stake for the time period and subtracting the cumulative previous reward. So that's sort of how you ensure that a staker like me, who's only staked 50 TEL, cannot earn more than 50. And so to expand on one of the points that I sort of included there was it's the lowest stake over the period. That's the one that is counted. So let's say I did stake 50 to start, but at some point I unstaked, half of that, and my stake amount dropped to 25 at any point during the period. The rewards cap will be calculated based off of the 25 TEL and not the 50 TEL, because it'll start at the lowest point. So in the case where a time period passes and I might have started with 50 TEL staked at the beginning, but it dropped to 25, and then went back up to 50. The rewards cap calculation will still be based off of the 25 amount, and so I will be less likely to actually receive any issuance rewards depending on the cumulative previous rewards that I have accumulated over the course of the program. So I know that's a bit complicated, but it is it's an important nuance for this, because it's incentive to make sure that stakers don't sort of unstake willy-nilly or try to game the program by staking at certain times and then unstaking over most of the period, and then sort of staking up again before the calculation of the issuance amount. So that way there's a very fixed and relatively restrictive way for these issuance amounts to be calculated. A lot of this other technical part of the spec is, related to smart contracts on chain, the events here, the user fees. So again, this will all be posted to the TANIP forum. So, if you're interested in the smart contract events and the way that I'm going to derive sort of where the user fees are based off of on-chain data, or what the relationships between stakers, referrers, and referees will be, that will be on the forum. But in a nutshell, I guess I will read out the flow here that I plan to implement. So in essence, we'll only need 5 steps on a high level. The first will be to provide a time period for the distribution. And I should have said before I started the high level flow, this at the moment, like I said, there's an existing code base of this spec being implemented for related, but not quite the exact same spec. And so it's implemented in an off-chain way. And, it would be very nice to have sort of the referral program directly happening on chain, because that is where all of the information originates and ends. All of the swaps, all of the addresses who are performing the swaps, the sort of the TEL coin token itself and the token it's being swapped to, all of that is happening on chain. And so we're toying with the idea of protocolizing it and migrating a lot of the existing code for the spec onto the chain. There are some complicating factors sort of making that not the best idea at the moment. One of which I mentioned, obviously, the privacy of the referral codes and sort of the relationships between stakers and referrers and referees. So that's one consideration, but the other is that this spec is sort of being added to a number of existing contracts, and those contracts have already undergone smart contract audits repeatedly and very recently as well. So it's it doesn't make too much sense to sort of re-architect everything around this first TANIP. But I wanted to bring this up because it is a goal on the roadmap to sort of make a lot of the calculation, the issuance, the calculation of the issuance closer to the metal, and sort of be more on-chain native. And I have a few ideas of how to do that, but they're sort of on the roadmap. Okay, so going back to the flow. The first thing is to provide a time period for the distribution. And this will be sort of provided to an off-chain tool, a utility that performs the calculations and outputs sort of the calculated distribution amounts. And then that information can then be used to distribute the rewards on-chain. Like I said earlier, the time period will generally be 1 week, but it's flexible. So, the tool will be flexible enough to accept, a 2-week period for whatever reason, maybe the holidays or something. The second step for the utility is to identify the total amount of user fees for eligible users. And if you remember, that's stakers and referrers. So one thing I should have mentioned too, there's no, like, these are 3 protocol participant categories, but there's no, these can be a Venn diagram that's a circle, right? You can be a staker, you can be a referrer, and you can be a referee all at once, or any combination thereof, essentially. So the evaluation for whether or not you are an eligible user is sort of according to the rules that I went over before. But anyway, so the second step after providing a time period is to sort of sum up all of the user fees over that time period, and use that as the basis for a pro rata calculation that will sort of define the lines along which the 3.2 issuance amount will be split. And that it might not be 3.2 million TEL every week, but that could change, or if we're talking about a 2-week time period, it could be 6.4. But regardless, the pro rata sort of proportion for each eligible user, whether they're a staker or a referrer, will sort of remain fixed for that time period. It'll be splitting that total sum along the lines of this calculation. So once the total amount of user fees over the time period is calculated, or summed up, then it sort of needs to be split up pro rata for each eligible user. So one way to look at this is maybe from a PVP lens. If you think of it this way, where there was a, I don't know, let's say for simplicity, let's say there were 100 TEL of fees over the entire time period over the week, and that's a very small number, but for simplicity, that's where we're going with. And the total amount, the proportion of your eligible fees. If you're a staker, that's only your fees. If you're a referrer, that's your fees and all of your referees' fees. The proportion of your eligible fees to that total fees, which, like I said, was 100, is going to be your proportion to the total issuance amount. And that's what the pro rata share for each eligible user means. So let's, I guess, continue that example. Let's say that there were, again, 100 TEL in total user fees over the time period. And I am a staker who, let's just say I was responsible for 50 TEL of that total 100 TEL in fees. So I did a bunch of trading. I did half of the trading of all of the fees. That means that when the week is over and the TAN issuance amount is going to be calculated and distributed, I will then be entitled to half of that the total distribution amount. So I would be, in that case, eligible or distributed. I would be receiving 1.6 million TEL because, again, I did so much trading that I was responsible for half of the total fees. And to sort of extend that same situation, okay, so maybe I was responsible for half of the total fees. I was responsible for 50 TEL worth of the total eligible fees. Let's say, Leo and Parker Leo was another staker who, did a referral and referred Parker. And Leo and Parker combined sort of comprised the rest of the total fee amount. So they in total comprised 50 TEL as well. So depending on the stake amount, depending on their cumulative sort of previous rewards, these numbers can change. But on a high level, again, I'm sort of just describing how to approach this program. So then in that case, because they comprise the other 50 TEL of the total 100, they, between the two of them, would be splitting the other 1.6 million TEL being issued for this period. So, and then, once you have sort of that big picture outline of how how the program is assigning the eligibility and the proportion of those rewards to be issued, there's, like I said, rewards caps to factor in. There's a few other, stake amounts that have to sort of be factored in, but in general, that's more or less how this works. So, and that is actually the next step. Once the pro rata share for each staker and refer has been calculated, again, the pro rata share of the entire total sum of fees for that time period, the fourth step is to then apply the rewards caps to those values. And those rewards caps, like I said, are derived from the stake amount, the lowest stake amount for the period, if your stake amount fluctuates, as well as the cumulative previous rewards, to ensure that you're never able to earn more TEL than you have staked. So that's number 4. Once the rewards caps have been applied, those rewards caps actually could drastically alter the proportions. I said I was responsible for 50 TEL of fees, and Leo and Parker together were responsible for 50 TEL of the fees, and Leo had referred Parker, or I don't remember what I said, but that those proportions can actually be pretty drastically affected by this reward cap mechanism. So let's say that I was indeed responsible for 50 TEL worth of the total fees, but my reward cap has already been reached. I only have 50 TEL staked, and I've already reached 50 TEL worth of rewards. Or some other way, I guess maybe if I just lowered my stake to 0 or something over the time period, then the calculation has to be amended so that Parker and TEL are now receiving 100% of the total issuance. The full 3.2 million would be going to those two because, again, I'd sort of hit my rewards caps, or I'd sort of unstaked to 0 at some point. So that calculation has to be adjusted. And yeah, so that's more or less the high level of the technical spec. I have some data structures, some events here, some calculations that are relevant, going into detail for how all that is going to work, in the code, and data being pulled from the backend and the smart contracts on chain. But that's more or less how the program is spec'd out to work. And of course, we encourage community feedback when the forum post is up, which will be soon. We encourage everybody to read through it, evaluate it, ask questions about it. We will be on the forum ready to answer questions and talk about sort of the implementation of the spec. But it is ongoing, and I expect it'll be a success.
That was awesome, Marcus. Pretty impressive how you managed to get all of that across without any kind of visuals or anything. I think it made sense, and yeah, just very impressive.
Yeah, I wasn't able to share my screen. I apologize, but
No, you're good. We can work on that for next time. But I don't think you missed anything there. Yeah, nice. I was kind of wondering as you were talking, it kind of sounds like you inherited this kind of procedure from some kind of previous spec. Was there anything as you were going through it that you were kind of questioning or thought maybe it could be done better or differently or anything like that based on the kind of the way it's actually implemented, what's kind of required of us to do these calculations every week, or what the how it actually will lead to certain outcomes, and if there's any kind of any efficiency gains there potentially by changing some parameters or introducing some new ones or something like that.
yeah. Well, the existing code is about a year old, and so it's great code actually. It's kind of a joy to read. It's structured very nicely. It's sort of sandbox different databases that are responsible for different things, and sort of syncs relevant block data into those databases so you can operate it on it locally, in ways that are cheaper and faster, and just in general more friendly than pulling stuff, off of a chain as you need it. But like I said, there's been a lot of technical drift. So the existing implementation, has sort of gone pretty deep into into different programs than the one that we've described here. And so I did say at the beginning that this program is going to be sort of relevant for both stakers and developers. But there are some other sort of other calculations and other incentives programs that are similar in structure, but not fully related, or maybe not even relevant at this point in time. So one example for that is there's actually a gas fees incentives calculator, which I've been instructed to ignore. But that's something that could be on the menu for something in the future. Maybe when we're talking about gas fees being paid in TEL, I think that actually makes a lot of sense. And those calculations can happen, in similar ways. I'm actually not sure whether or not it makes use of the referrals mechanism. I'm looking at the code now, and it looks like it doesn't. So I think that that program itself may be more relevant to the developers who have their own executor addresses who sort of perform all of these transactions on chain. Um, so for a lot of the way that this stuff is structured around the developer side is um, the developers appear to be sort of responsible for paying gas for all of their applications, sponsoring it on behalf of the user, for example. And I think that makes a lot of sense. And then to sort of tack a gas fee incentive um, program to that fact is even more beneficial because that sort of shores up the potential for you know developer expenses. Um, so anyway, I only talking about this because there's a lot of technical drift that has happened since this was implemented. The main to answer your question, the main sort of thought that I had in looking at the existing stuff and the spec as it stands today was why run all this off chain, why implement some sort of off chain calculator that just looks at the chain, performs a bunch of calculations, it spits out a bunch of TEL numbers, and then hands that off to an EOA that will then sort of put those TEL distributions back onto the chain, right? Like why veer off the chain in the first place?
Yeah.
And so that I think there's something there that is worth exploring in the future, because moving a lot of this on chain and sort of having the flows of funds happen in real time as the swaps are happening or the staking is being done or the referrals are happening could be a fun gamification, on-chain gamification of this program, and sort of drive like organic TEL usage on a chain like Polygon or Telcoin network. But there's sort of some tech debt that's relevant, and there's some privacy concerns around the referrals themselves, um, that would have to be addressed. That's not to say it's not possible. It's definitely possible to maintain privacy for those things and um, to arrange a protocol that works and serves the users and the developers and the stakers like in a positive some way. But um, given where we're at right now and the priorities at play, I'm also working on bridging the Telcoin token over and onto Telcoin network, and in addition to this, so where priorities stand, um, protocolizing it fully on chain at the moment is just not the best use of our resources. And I also, like I said before, there's been extensive contract audits of the smart contracts that are sort of being looked at for this program, and the most recent smart contract audit for those contracts that will be used for this program concluded like last week, I believe.
Mhm.
So it's sort of just timing and a number of factors that make this sort of the better way to go for the moment.
Yeah, makes sense. And I agree with that. Sounds like we've got a pretty good solution that's easy to implement, and we can get this out the door and working, and yeah, we can always improve it later. That's awesome. I was kind of I was kind of toying with the idea as you were talking about it. The idea of, if we're doing calculations off chain anyway, they can probably be kind of beefier, perhaps. So like currently the spec is basically just involved in like the first layer of depth. Like uh, you've got stakers, referrers, referees, but as as the TAN Council, we kind of highly value network and network effects. Is there any way we could kind of consider not just referrers and referees, but then the referees of the referees? So it's the value of the network as a whole, on a larger scale, rather than being kind of localized like that. Maybe bringing in some other coefficient that will scale proportionally, or uh, yeah, proportionally to the network of the network that you are the referrer of, kind of thing. But also probably the maths or code would get a bit disgusting there. I was just wondering if that was something that came to mind at all while you were looking through those scripts.
Um, it did come to mind because, yeah, I mean, as a sort of an edge case or a, from a technical standpoint, like you said, the maths do get pretty gnarly.
Yeah,
Well, because then you have sort of like a logarithmic calculation. You're no longer just doing um, something linear,
yeah,
and it would be sort of the degrees of separation between the original staker and their referee, or the original, I should say, the original referrer and their referee, and that referee's referee, and that referee's referee, and all the networks, the branches dendritically out from that path, would get quite
I've got a
complicated very
headache
quickly. Not
already.
something I know, not something you would want to put on chain, but it would be doable off chain. You would just want to make sure that the incentives are aligned that way.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's cool though. Maybe a hackathon down the line or something. We'll get someone to whip something like that up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, the one more from me was how does this look kind of in practice? Does this require someone from the council to run a script once a week kind of thing, or how does that side of things work?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, there will be a calculation that needs to be performed, and sort of a middle ground that could be on the roadmap too is adding sort of these read functions onto the contracts that are existing. And for anybody who doesn't know, there's two kinds of functions of smart contracts on an EVM chain. There's read and there's write. And the ones that you're probably more familiar with are write transactions because those are ones that alter the state of the chain. But adding read functions to a smart contract is simple to do and generally has no security implications except for an extremely rare like read-only reentrancy things. But anyway, so what we could do is we could add sort of these read functions to the contracts that might handle some of the calculations in a way that's completely free because it doesn't alter the state of the chain. And so while yes, the answer to your question at the moment is this script will need to be sort of calculated on a weekly or however often basis to split the issuance amount and distribute it to the stakers and referrers and referees. Um, in the near future, we may find ways to sort of um, move those calculations, or at least pieces of those calculations, into the smart contracts themselves, and that way the function and the calculation that's happening is right next to the data that it's accessing. It's literally like reading state from the contract and performing a calculation there and returning something. So there will be ways to simplify the process, but yes, at the moment it's going to be a mostly fully off-chain script that will be pulling data from the chain to sort of give an action item on a weekly basis. So the action item being this is the amount to distribute to each of the stakers and referrers.
Nice. And then how does the output of those calculations, how does that get back on chain again afterwards?
Yeah, another part that I want to do on the roadmap to sort of automate this and protocolize it and move it back to the on-chain side is to implement a distribution contract. And this is just something that I'm ideating on. It's not part of the spec yet. I need to run it by some people first, but so to my knowledge, that distribution hasn't been done yet, even with the existing code base. I might be wrong about that though. Um, but anyway, so to my knowledge, it hasn't been sort of done or solidified yet. So presumably, depending on the gas costs, you would have just a just a plain Jane, transaction that sort of batches all of these ERC20 transfers to each of the recipients with their weighted distribution that was calculated. Um, so I guess another way I can put this is at the moment where the implementation stops is it produces like a map, um, just a list of addresses, and those addresses correspond to eligible referrers and stakers. And then each one of those entries in that list is mapped to like a weighted distribution, and that's the calculated amount that's supposed to go to them. So
Okay.
that's where the implementation stops at the moment. And I don't think there's anything that has been implemented that then performs the distribution. Um, but presumably that would just be you know, a huge batch transaction or several of them that would then perform it. But what would be nice is to sort of route all of that data through a single distribution contract that is tailored to expect it and you know,
Yeah.
do it properly, I guess.
Hmm. Okay, nice. Cool, that makes sense. That kind of relates a bit to Andrew's question there. He asked, is there going to be a report or something put out every week detailing how the allocations were broken out and calculated? So I think to answer that, if I may have a go, one of us will be running the script and yeah, creating a report based on that script should be reasonable. I mean, it will be the same calculation each week, the same method, so that might not be that interesting. Um, but yeah, does that sound about right, Marcus?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah,
And so yeah, this sort of we literally had a meeting today discussing, how can we maintain a level of privacy of those referral relationships so as not to sort of, dox anybody or their friends or their family or anything untoward, but still provide that verification that the question is sort of um, hinting at, right? Like you want to know that the amount that you're being issued is the correct amount.
yeah,
And this discussion is still ongoing, but there will be, sort of an open source um, repository of the calculator. So if you know any developers or you are one yourself, you can verify that the code being run is correct. You can rerun it yourself. But in order to rerun it yourself, there is that missing referral relationships bit that needs to be fed in. And so we're thinking that potentially we can potentially, don't quote me on this because Parker has not decided either direction on it, but it may be acceptable in our mind to sort of circulate those that sort of referral relationships um, document to council members who could then rerun the calculation and sort of assuade the community that it was run correctly with the correct data and the correct output. But it's a complicated sort of
mm,
verification process.
fair enough. Yeah, it's probably compliance and stuff involved as well. So yeah,
Another
uh,
way to, I think he mentioned this, would be you if you just if you looked at your own network of referees and your own fees, you would be able
mm,
to you would easily be able to verify your own amount.
hmm,
So, right, like let's say I did the 50 tel worth of fees and trades, and I referred somebody who did 10 tel worth of fees, then the amount that I can calculate for myself is at my disposal, right? I have 50 plus 10, so 60 that I'm originally responsible for, and then I can apply my rewards cap. That will be easy for me as a user to verify, but it's verifying everybody else's
yeah.
that sort of introduces the complexity.
I think that would be a nice solution, though. Yeah, if we let people run their own numbers, and then that should be proof. Yeah, I'm happy with
Exactly.
that. Lovely. Okay. Well, thank you again, Marcus. That was great, and yeah, as I say, very impressed by your presentation skills, minus the presentation kind of thing. Um, and I'm sure, I mean, we may need to hear from you again in future because uh, we'll probably have to all read this ourselves and digest it a bit more. In the meantime, are there any more questions from anyone? Or
Yes, please. Yeah.
yeah.
I'd like to know what happens if there are remaining incentives. For instance, Parker said the last time that at the beginning we would have only two developers. So, are the 1 million remaining?
Mhm.
Um, redistributed into the stakers pool, or will it be returned to the treasury?
I think it goes to the TAL, if I'm not mistaken. I'm just skimming through the proposal here. Um, I think there was mention of it going to the TAL safe, but I mean, at the end of the day, that's also for us to decide. So, what would you like? What would you suggest happens?
I suggest that at first it goes for the stakers,
Okay.
and hopefully, quick enough, we will have more than three, or at least three developers, so we won't have any remaining incentives. But at first, if we don't have at least three developers, it would be a good idea to boost more the stakers program.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that's an option. Um, yeah, it almost comes back again to us figuring out which numbers are right. You know, this 3.2 mil is quite arbitrary, and as you mentioned last call, we do want to fine tune that value. So yeah, I guess if there aren't many developers at the start, we'll be rewarding the stakers pretty handsomely, um, which I guess is a pretty good kind of marketing move, perhaps. Um, yeah, that could be interesting. Are you a staker by any chance? Is that why you've suggested that?
Exactly. That's true.
Okay, we're on to you.
But I
Um,
don't have many referees.
okay, fair enough. Um, yeah, that's definitely a good point, though. We should consider that, and maybe that will be a good topic for discussion this over the next few weeks. We can talk through this a bit more in Discord, and when the other council members arrive, um, we can think that through. But I'm not against that idea at face value, but I think it's worth considering a bit more. But yeah, thanks for raising that.
You're welcome. And if we don't put it here, we could incentives the TELX pool, as I'm representing the TELX pool. Could be great for a liquidity provider if you don't want to use it for more for staker.
So you'd like to kind of pump more incentives into telex pools? Is that what you're suggesting?
I'm just opening the debate. I'm as I'm representing the liquidity providers here in the TEN Council. Said why not taking it for the liquidity providers? But it would be great, as I understood. We really want to have more volume on the app and more takers. That's a very good option as well to give the remaining incentives for the stakers.
Oh,
But
okay.
I think
Yeah.
we can think about the two possibilities
Okay. Yeah.
better than in the treasury.
hmm Um, Marcus, are there any downsides technically to kind of incentivizing LP pools directly to LP token holders, I guess, in that case?
And to, sorry,
If
one
we
more
were
time
to
for me?
take some of the TEL issuance that doesn't get used by developers, so up to the point that there are three developers, that excess TEL issuance, could we divert that into TELX liquidity pools, for example, or give it to TELX liquidity pool token holders, I guess would be the way to do that?
I mean, no technical limitations of my knowledge. Yeah, I think at that point you would more want to consider the economic side.
Yeah.
But I don't think there would be any difficulty I mean, there would be extra steps technically, if you're wanting to incentivize or adding liquidity or sort of move those things around, you would have to write the code to do it in a way that scales. But it's definitely possible. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I would be more concerned about, like more economic stuff, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think it's key to remember that TEL is scarce, and uh, in that light, we've really got to look after our kind of TEL holdings as a council, I think. And that's kind of, I think, what Andrew's getting at as well, suggesting you could put the balance into a TAN treasury. And I guess if it's in a TAN treasury, yeah, you can use it for marketing or anything else, really. I'm kind of probably initially more keen on holding on to our TEL. So I'd quite like it if that undistributed TEL that isn't going to the developers just stays in the TAN Council safe for now, until we get a really good idea of what we want to use it on. But as I say, we've got plenty of options, and as long as we kind of come to consensus on it, we can do whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Okay, we're expecting one question from Dave, maybe, but does anyone have any other questions or? Oh, okay. And has Dave given up there? Maybe. Okay. The last thing was figuring out when our next meeting should be. But I think it feels a little bit unethical that it's just the two Europeans left on here for now. I don't think it's fair for us to start deciding when the next meeting will be, but we will have that discussion on Discord. I know it's been a while, Knoppy, but yeah, we will sort that, and I think some of the others were in favour of moving it forward a few hours as well, which would greatly benefit us, seeing as it's 1:10 in the morning here. But yeah, we'll have that discussion async if that's all right. And yeah,
That's cool.
okay,
We'll talk about it.
perfect, thank you. And then Dave suggests he'd roll it over to next month's rewards, so there's more to incentivize more than 3 developers. Yeah, that's also a nice option. Yeah, I rate that. I don't know exactly. Yeah, I think the full TAN Council safe balance is available, so that would also make sense. Yeah. So we've got a few good options there for how to spend or distribute those excess TEL holdings. I think, yeah, if we consider talking about that a bit more in depth in the Discord channels over the next few weeks, that would be great. They're all good solutions, and I think it's looking pretty promising. Lovely. That's all from me. If no one else has anything to add, I suggest we end it there.
Great.
Lovely. Thank you all for swinging by, and thank you very much, Marcus. That was a great presentation.
Happy to help.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Cheers, guys.
Good night.
Good night.
Happy holidays.